Facebook, what up? It's your boy Mike the Mentor here, coming at you for the Sunday sermon. So just an advance warning, tonight could be a possible trigger warning for some people. I'm going to be talking about my brother and one of the hardest things that I ever went through in my life, and that was his suicide. I'm looking for something right now and I can't find it. Guess it doesn't matter. I think I would know where all this stuff is by now. Okay, here it is. Alright, so if you're new to this page, the reason I started this page was a couple, but one, being 38 years old, I look back on my life and I'm always asking myself, like, what made a difference? Why was I born into the situation in the life that I had, that I went through so many tough things, especially at a young age, and I was able to do something with my life, able to be the first one in my family to graduate from college, have a good job, have my own family today. What were those defining moments, or what were those tipping points in my life that got me from there to where I am today? Well, why didn't I give up? Why am I not just a complete, I guess, jerk? Why am I not angry and negative? Why do I have this great outlook on my life? And the two main reasons: one, the grace of God on my own life, and everything that I've been through. The second reason, and the reason I made this page, though, is because mentors played a huge role in my life. Whether they were guys physically who were in my life, older, who took me under their wing and showed me things, just loved on me, let me be a part of their family, and see what it was like to be a part of a normal family, and what went on and how they interacted with their wives and their children and those around them. Just different mentors I had in the books I was reading, and learning about other people's lives and the trials that they went through and how they were able to make something out of their lives. And I found a lot of hope in that. And I thought, if these people could do this, why couldn't I do this? Like, it's my choice, right? So that's why I created this page, just because I'm just tired of men, beating themselves down, with shame and with disappointment and with regret. And there's the saying, right? You don't know what you don't know. And that's so true. And I was at a very tough point in my life, where I wasn't sure that I wanted to continue in my marriage and continue doing the things that I was doing. And I was fortunate enough to have some brothers come alongside of me, and we went through a course together, and it really opened my eyes to a lot of things that I had happened in my past that I had never fully dealt with and really faced. And it wasn't until I was willing to do that that profound changes started happening in my life, and I would just be able to live with more hope and more satisfaction and more fulfillment in what the things that I had. So tonight, the Sunday sermon, we'll jump right into it here, talking about my brother, and something that was extremely hard for me to go through. So this is going to be pretty vulnerable. I don't know what's going to happen. Might get emotional. We'll see. So we'll jump into this. Share my screen here. And alright, hopefully no technical difficulty tonight. So here we go. So yeah, this is my brother. This is obviously, he's a baby. Sunday sermon, week 9, ATK. Those were his initials, Anthony T. King. And if you notice, he has a bandage on his hand. He's probably, man, I don't even, 2 at this point, and we were living in this house. And my mom was ironing some clothes, and she had the iron propped up on the side ledge, and My brother got too close to it and it fell over and it burned his hand really bad. So he had that bandage, third-degree burns, if I remember correctly, all over his hand. In his right hand, there was a massive scar on there from the burn. But you know, he was always a happy-go-lucky kid, goofy at times, mischievous. But you know, he had a positive outlook on life, despite all the things that we went through growing up. You know, here's him in front of my grandpa's house. I think this was a Sunday morning picture, getting ready for church with my grandparents, and you know, he's hanging out in my grandpa's car. You know, just giving a big smile there. And then this picture is pretty fitting of him. I was at my grandpa's house again. You know, me, my sister, and then my brother, Mr. Cheese. With he might have had something in his mouth there. I'm not sure, but that's him. You know, always being silly and goofy. He was the life of the party wherever we went. And then here he is, a little bit older. Some dance in high school. Him and my sister taking this picture together. As we got older, you know, they were a lot closer than those two were a lot closer than I was to my brother or I was to my sister, just because I was kind of doing my own thing away at college and not, I guess, really aware of what was going on at home with my brother or my sister. I was just trying to survive and make it, I guess. And I just had one goal, and that was to be in college, play basketball, and then afterwards, hopefully, have an opportunity to play overseas or afterwards. So that was my mission, and I just wasn't gonna let anything stop me from doing that. So yeah, there's another picture of my brother. It shows how crazy he is trying to lick this girl's ear, right? At some dance, being his goofy self, the consummate ladies' man. Another picture with him and his friends. That guy in the hat right there. That was Nick. That was probably one of his best friends. They did a lot of things together. Went a lot of places, a lot of trips together. You know, Nick made a big difference in his life, and I'm sure my brother made a big difference in Nick's life. And then here's a picture from me, maybe senior year of high school. Got him in a headlock here. I think I told the story before of we were living in this house, and my room was down in the basement, and we were painting the walls, and my brother, for some reason, he thought it would be funny to pick up the bucket of paint and dangle it over the entryway between the hall and my room. And I was like, "What are you doing?" I go, "If you drop that paint in my room, you know I'm going to give you the beatdown of a lifetime." And sure enough, he was laughing and swinging the paint back and forth, and I just kind of stuttered towards him, and he got scared and sure enough dropped the paint, and it went all over my room, and I got pretty mad, and he tried to run up the stairs, and I grabbed him by the back of his foot and dragged him down the stairs and pulled him into my room and punched him a couple of times, and then I took the roller from the paint and stuck it in the bucket and proceeded to roll the paint all over his face and on his body, and he was screaming and crying, and I was mad and let him go, and he ran outside and ran up the hill to my grandpa's house and told my grandpa, and then I got a good foot in my butt from my grandpa for doing that. But that just goes to show the kind of relationship that we had, right? Like brothers, we loved each other very much, but we argued and fought as well at times. And here's another picture of him. He went somewhere. I think he went somewhere with Nick. I think it was maybe it was Jamaica or something else. And then, you know, met these girls, I guess, and flashing those pearly whites of his with these girls. And then here's one of his good friends, Autumn. Picture from a dance in high school that they went to. And then here's my brother's senior picture. So I'll just leave this up here for a little bit. Yeah, so, man, October 1st, or October, oh my god, I can't even think now. October 9th, 2001, I was a senior, and no, I wasn't a senior, I was a sophomore in college, and I was asleep in my dorm room, and my phone rings, and it's one of my friends, and I pick up the phone, and I'm like, hey, what's going on? Still groggy, because 8 o'clock in the morning, 8:30 in college, you don't usually get up that early unless you have class. And my friend said, hey, have you spoken with anybody at home yet? And I was like, no, that's kind of weird. Like, why? What's going on? And he's like, well, I can't tell you, you should just call home. And I'm like, okay, thanks. And he hung up the phone, and I'm like, call home. I wonder what's going on. I figured if anything, it was maybe something wrong with my grandpa. He had already outlived all his brothers, by a number of years. So just in my mind, that was the first thing, is something happened to my grandpa. Maybe he had a heart attack or something. So I called home, and no one answered, left a message. And as soon as I hung my phone up, my other friend called, and he's like, hey, have you spoken with anybody at home? And I'm like, no. I'm like, Justin just called me and said the same thing, like, what's going on? And he's like, man, I can't tell you. He's like, you really just need to call home right now. And I'm like, okay, I'm trying to. And he hangs up the phone, and then my first buddy, Justin, calls back, and he's like, hey, did you speak with anybody? And I'm like, no, I haven't. What is going on? And he starts to cry, and he doesn't want to tell me. And I'm like, hey, man, you need to tell me what's going on right now. And he chokes on a couple of his words, and then he's like, your brother's dead. You need to get home right now. So it was just surreal. I jump in my car, or no, I'm skipping ahead. I jump down from my bunk, and I throw my warm-ups on. My roommate overheard these conversations, and he's like, is everything okay? And I'm like, no, supposedly my brother's dead. I got to get home right now. Tell coach I'm not going to be at practice. And I grabbed my keys and my jacket, and I took off, and I ran across the campus, and jumped into my car and drove as fast as I could for about the first 5 minutes. Maxing out the governor on my little two-door Chevy Camry, or I don't even remember, it was green car that I had. And before I realized, hey, I should probably slow down so I could make it home. And there's not two people who died that day. And after a good 45 minutes of driving home, I pull into my grandpa's driveway, and sure enough, I could see two figures up by the garage from the bottom of the driveway. And as I got closer, it was my two buddies that called me, Justin and TJ, who were two of my best friends there. And I parked, and I got out of the car, and they were just crying, and they came up and they gave me a hug. And I'm just trying to figure out what's going on. I'm just waiting any minute to wake up, and this to be just the craziest dream that I've ever had. And they hug me and stuff and tell me how sorry they are, and I'm just like, all right, I'm gonna go inside and see if anyone's here or there's any messages or whatever. So I check the answering machine, and there's no messages, just mine. And I come out, and when I'm coming out, here come all these cars. First, my uncle Tom gets out, and he's crying, and he's like, I'm so sorry, and he hugs me, and I'm still I'm in shock. I just don't even know. I mean, I know what's going on, but I don't want to believe it. And then, more teachers start coming up, and friends of my brother, and then, it was kind of crazy. And then my grandma came up, and she's crying. And then the crazy thing, too, was my sister, she was a freshman at college, so she was off on her campus, and her friend had to go get her and drive her back. My grandpa, he was up north at his cabin, so his friend had to drive all the way up there and get him and then bring him back. And so all these cars are coming up one after another. And then my mom comes up, and she's crying and we're hugging, and man, the hardest one out of all those was probably when my sister pulled in, and her friend's driving, and all these people are standing around, and the car comes up, and you could see she's crying, and she just starts bawling as soon as she sees all these people, and the passenger door opens, and man, she falls out and just falls on the asphalt and just lays there like a little baby, and she's just crying uncontrollably. And so I go over there and I scoop her up in my arms and bring her over to the grass, and my mom comes around me, and we just kind of all hug each other, and I'm just still just like inside of me, my default mode is like take care of everybody else, just be strong, like you'll just figure this out later, and if this is actually even real. And then just consoling my sister, and then after that, soon after, my grandpa, he showed up, and some point in all this madness, I go to my mom, and this was probably like my first like emotional like breakdown, right? I go to my mom and pull her aside. I'm like, what? Like, what's even going on? I'm like, how did Anthony like do this? And she's like, he got one of your grandpa's guns, and he shot himself. And I'm like, yeah, right. I'm like kind of laughing. I'm like, you're funny, Mom. I'm like, if he was gonna commit suicide, he would never do that. He would take pills, or he would, I don't know, drink a bunch of alcohol and pass out, or he would, you know, run the car in the garage. He would never shoot himself. Like he's not even he's not that brave. Like he I don't know how to say it. I'm just gonna be blunt. Like he doesn't have balls that big enough to do that. Like to me, like you have to be a very brave person to put a gun in your mouth and be willing to pull the trigger. And she's like, no, that's exactly what he did. And just the weight of that like hit me, and like I just fell to my knees and like started crying, and I just was like telling my mom like, no, I don't believe you. Like I refuse to believe that. Like no, no, no. And wanting to come to grips with that. And I remember later I'm like, I still don't believe you. I'm gonna go find out if that's true. And I was asking my uncle where his car was at, and my uncle told me that it got towed. And he looked me dead in my eyes, and he told, because he had went there, I guess, because he had to for as part of this whole thing. And he looked me dead in my eyes, and he told me, he goes, don't you ever go there and look at that car. I can't, he's like, you'll never get that out of your mind. And I can't imagine like what he saw when he went there, but I'll just never forget the look on his face and how sternly he looked me in my eyes and told me not to go there. So all this is obviously going on, and we're still trying to put together the pieces of what happened. The next thing I remember is going to the actual school and having to clean out my brother's locker and all the notes that kids had stuck in it, get all his personal artifacts, and we came back home, and we think earlier after that, like we had to go to the funeral home and like start to plan all of that stuff. And I remember that first night being at home, and we were down in my grandma's basement watching TV, and I'm like, this just doesn't make any sense. Like, why would he do this? Like, there has to be an answer, right? Like, there has to be. There has to be a reason. Like, what would that be? And I just went in his room and just started looking around, and like I wanted to know. Like I'm looking for like some note. I'm looking for any sign of why he would take his own life. And I just remember like he had this computer desk, and I'm looking in the drawers, and then I was looking in the drawers on this side, and then I put my hands up on top of the desk, and my hand bumped the mouse, and all of a sudden the computer screen lit up. And on the computer screen was this note, and my eyes started to scan this note, and sure enough, it was the note that he left us. And he had something in there for me, something in there for my sister, something in there for my mom and my grandparents, and then he just talked about all the cousins and nieces and nephews that he'd never get to meet and how sorry he was. And then he had a quote from one of his favorite pastors that said, "I'm in your future, I'm not in your past." I think that's how it went, but I just lost it. Like, no one else was in there, everyone else was in the living room, so I think I crawled back out to the living room, and I was crying, and my sister's like, "What is it? What is it?" And I just can't get the words out, and I'm like pointing towards his room, and I'm hysterically just crying. And so she's crying, and she gets up and she goes to his room and she finds the note, and then my mom goes in there, and then now, we're all crying together, laying on the floor in the living room, and just like reliving this thing over again, right? And that was a hard night. And then the next day, so we got to start the funeral stuff that goes on, and the week of that entails. Well, I'm still trying to piece together, all the stuff that happened, and now that hindsight is 2020. What ended up happening, to give you a little context, is my brother had a really rough summer that year before his senior year. The first thing he had is he got pulled over, him and some friends driving around, and I don't know if he was smoking marijuana or somebody in the car was smoking marijuana, and they got pulled over, and no one would admit to it. And since it was my brother's car, he was the one that got arrested and taken to jail for that. And my grandpa had to go pick him up. And I know that he felt a lot of embarrassment from that happening, right? Like he felt like he let our family down and the community down and all the people that knew him. So that was the first thing. And then the second thing is he was at football camp, and there was some sort of hazing going on, and he was part of it in some way. And him and a bunch of kids, there was some repercussions from that. So that was the second thing that just really weighed heavily on his mind. And then the third thing is he broke his foot. And my understanding is he broke his foot in practice, and then he was given some sort of painkillers for that. And then he, I believe, was able to make it back in time to play in some games, or in the first game he was back, he ended up re-breaking his foot. I might be confused, but the main point of this is he had this broken foot, and he was taking these painkillers, and this kid came to him and said that, hey, can I get one of those? And my brother, being the kind, aloof type of kid that he was, his friend came to him, so he, like most teenagers would, he gave one to his friend. And there was a policy at the school that said if you knew anybody that was selling drugs, you could go to the office and you could turn them in, and you could get some monetary award, like $100 or $200, maybe even $500. So this kid went to the office, and he said my brother sold him this pill, or gave him these pills, and to get this reward. And the school had a no questions asked policy, so they immediately expelled him without any type of investigation into this. And I know my brother was completely crushed, right? So now the momentum of all these things that have happened over the summer, and recently with his foot being broke and missing football senior year, and now he's expelled from school, I'm sure his mind was just spinning, and he was staring through like a keyhole, right? Looking out to life through a keyhole, and he could only see what was immediately in front of him, and that was he was expelled, and what was he going to do? And I guess my grandpa was up north, and my grandma was the only one home, and she said that my grandpa would deal with it when he got back, and my brother just needed to stay in his room. And I don't know. I mean, I just think of what I would do. He probably just sat there and laid there in his bed, and his mind just attacked him, right? Like all the negative thoughts, that the devil puts in your mind, just probably started eating at him, and he was like, "I'm just going to take matters into my own hands." And that's when he proceeded to sneak upstairs, and after my grandma was in her room or fell asleep or whatever, and took one of my grandpa's guns and put it in his car, and he drove to the high school parking lot. And the high school at this time was relatively new. It was like 2 or 3 years old. I think I was the first sophomore class in there, maybe junior class. And the high school sat between two main roads in our community. So a lot of people, right, like if they were in a hurry, they wouldn't drive all the way around the block. You'd just cut through the high school parking lot at that time. It was just quicker. So he was sitting there at night, and like, this is crazy, like, to me, like, especially if you're a believer, right? Like, I think that God is always pursuing you and trying to show you how much he loves and cares for you. And a lot of times we're just not aware of that, or we don't recognize his intervention in our lives. And my brother sat there and was contemplating what he was going to do, and one of his best friends just so happened to cut through the parking lot that night and saw his car there and pulled up to him and was like, "Hey King, like, what's going on? What are you doing out here?" And my brother was like, "I'm fine. I just need some time to think," and like kind of like drove his car up ahead a little bit, and then his friend like came up alongside him again and was like, "Hey, let's talk about it." And then my brother was like, "No, I don't want to talk," and like drove forward a little bit more, and this happened like 2 or 3 times, and then till my brother's friend was finally like, "Okay, well, if you want to talk, just let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you tomorrow at school." And he drove off, and my brother sat there, and the next day he proceeded to drive to the actual student parking lot, and he parked in the first spot closest to the building. And I guess kids started to come and park their cars and get ready to go to school, and they're walking in, and they said that he was still alive at that time. And some friends hollered to him, "Hey King, you coming into school?" And he was like, "Yeah, I'll be there in a little bit." And they went to school, and like 5 minutes into the first hour, a girl forgot a book out in her car, and so she got dismissed from class and went out there to get it. And there's like a walkway between, at the time, I think there still is, between the parking lot and the doors to the front of the building, and it's probably, I don't know, 50 feet or so. And she started to head down that walkway out to the parking lot, and that's when she noticed my brother slumped over in his car, and she ran back inside to the office and said what she saw. And that's when the the chaos ensued, and it set the chain of events in motion, of me being contacted and my family being contacted, right? So here we are at the funeral home, and I think there was 2 showings before the funeral, and I was pretty good, right? Like up and through the showings, like hugging people and just trying to be strong, and still all real surreal to me, despite like these 2 things that have happened, me finding his letter and finding out what he did. And after the second showing, we were back in the room, and there was going to be a private showing for the family, because the showing had to be and the funeral had to be closed casket. And man, that was tough. So we're back there, and they open up the casket, and they can't open up the head part. But yeah, there's his body laying in this casket, and everyone's just going up there and kind of saying their little piece. And one of my, I guess, like, proud moments of high school was going to this basketball camp and getting selected to play on this all-star team. And I got this shirt for it, and that was kind of like my little, like, pride and joy memento from that summer. And so people are dropping stuff in there left and right, and I just put this shirt down in there for my brother. And I don't know why, but I just, like, touched his hand because I was just waiting at any moment for that headpiece of the coffin to pop open, him to sit up, start laughing and saying how this is some crazy practical joke, and me just pounding on him for a couple minutes, and then us hugging, and this whole thing, this whole nightmare is over. But obviously that didn't happen. So we said what would be one of our final goodbyes to him. And the next day we had the funeral at our local church, and which was amazing, because that place was packed. I mean, absolutely packed with thousands of people who knew my brother or our family in some way. And just for us to talk and to share about his life. And up until something like this happens to you, it's hard to understand the magnitude and the gravity of life and how precious it is, like, every day. And you never knowing, like, those around you, those closest to you, when it's going to be the last time that you see them alive, right? And God just put this on my heart at the funeral to share this with people. And, like, if you love somebody, like, you need to tell them, like, when you see them, like, when they're leaving, like, if that's really how you feel. It doesn't matter if they're your family, if they're your friend, if they're a girl, if they're a guy, like, tell them you love them and give them a hug if that's how you feel, because you could wake up the next day and they could be gone from life, and nobody knows. So I shared that with them, and there was some other stuff said. And I mean, my team came up from college, and my coach, and just all these people, and this outpouring of love made it as easy as possible to kind of get through that day, as hard as it was. And after the funeral, we went to the burial spot, and it was raining, and there was the procession, and they had it all set up, and I was in one of the, I don't know, I was either at, I don't remember, but I just remember I was at the end of this road leading up to the burial, and I'm walking up the road, and everyone's, like, up there, walking as well. And there's this car, and all of a sudden the door opens, and this voice says, "Michael." And I turn and I look, and it's my dad, right? And I ain't seen this dude since I was 15, or since graduation, so almost 2 years. And he's like, "Come here." And I'm just like, what? Like, why? Like, really? Like, with all of this, like, now this too? Like, I don't know. So I go and I get in the back of the car, and it's my dad, and he's in there, and he's sobbing, and he's professing to me how sorry he is, and how he left, and kind of what he's been doing. And he just all feels, and I just want to lay into him, like, right? I just want to rip him a new one and just go off and, like, be like, "Yeah, you do suck. Like, you didn't keep your word again." And, like, but what difference would that have made? Like, right? He's already had all this shame on him, and he's telling me how he believes if he was really in our lives, my brother wouldn't have took his life, and we wouldn't be here at this moment. And he's telling me how sorry he is, and he gives me a hug, and I'm like, "Well, are you going to come out and go up there?" And he's like, "No, I can't." He's like, "It's too hard." And I'm like, "All right, well, I got to go because this thing's going down." And I'm sorry. And he's like, I'm going to be in touch. I'm going to be around. He's like, I promise you, I'm going to be here for you and your sister and be a part of your lives. And we're going to do more stuff together. And really inside, I want to be like, yeah, right. I've heard this before. But like I said, it ain't going to do any good. So I say, okay, Dad, love you. I'll talk to you later. And I get out. I go up to my brother's, the burial, right? And they do the pastor gives a little sermon, and then they lower his body into the ground, right? And we throw flowers in there, and people do stuff, and then kind of hang around, and that's it. But it's not it. And I guess the last couple of things that I would say, and I'll let you guys go tonight because I know this has been long, and I appreciate you guys just listening to me share this story with you. Is it was tough after he was gone. You know, my bedroom was at the end of the hallway in the basement at my grandma's, and his bedroom door was right before mine. So every night I'd have to walk down the hallway and go to my bedroom, and the last memory of that I have of him alive is me and my buddy were downstairs, and we were doing some partying before going out on the town, and doing some drinking, and he was down in the basement watching us as we were watching TV, and what a good example I was setting. And when we were done, I don't know what, but something told me to talk to him, and I had been drinking this bottle of vodka, and I took it, and I went and I hid it in my room under my bed, and I told him, I said, when I come home, I better not have found that you drank any of this liquor out of this bottle. And he's like, oh, I promise I won't. Like, I know you don't have to worry about that. And sure enough, I came home, and I'm walking down the hallway, and I go past his room, and he's sprawled out on his bed in his whitey tighties, like passed out. And so I go in my room, and I look for that bottle, and I find it, and it's completely empty. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. So I go in his room, and I jump on top of him, and I hit him a couple times, and I'm shaking him, and he comes to and wakes up, and I'm like, what are you doing, dude? Like, trying to have this moment with him, I guess, and of responsibility here, right, amongst the irresponsibility of what I did earlier. And it just leads to us having this talk for like 2 hours about all this stuff, like his life, like girls, like our lives growing up. It was like one of the most beautiful talks that I ever had with my brother. And I just, we hugged, and I told him I loved him, and right, like that was a gift, because that was the last time I saw him alive. And every time I'd walk down the hallway after he died, I'd hope in my mind that I'd walk by and I'd see him laying there on his bed in his whitey tighties. And it would never happen. He would never be in there. And for a long time, that was really tough. And then after he died, I don't know when, within a week or 2 weeks, right? Like I seemed like I was fine maybe on the outside, because I'm good at like masking my feelings and like meeting other people's needs before I meet my own. And but I was tore up inside. And I remember one night I was sleeping, and I came to in the middle of the night, and I sat up in my bed, and my brother was standing at the end of my bed. And I said, what are you doing? And he just looked at me. And then it hit me that I was in a dream. And I said to him, this is a dream, isn't it? And he just shook his head, yes. And then like that, I woke up. and I just started crying, like, because I couldn't believe, like, I don't know if that was a sign, I don't know what that was, but it was just so real, and it was so tough. And it's like he was right there, and like tried to like reach out and grab him, and then it's over. Like there's no finality, there's no closure, there's like, that was hard. And here we are 17 years later, and I only recently like dealt with this. Like, I thought that I had been over it, and maybe I'll post the video to this channel, but about a year ago, maybe a little less, I made this video because I had this experience, you guys, where I was at this men's retreat serving, and in the middle of the night, I had this dream where I was working out, and I was working out in this dream so hard, and I was done, and I was putting on my shoes, and there was these stationary exercise bikes next to where I was putting my shoes on, and this girl was riding this bike, and she looks at me and she goes, "That must have been so hard." And I thought she was talking about the workout. And I said, "Yeah, I like to work out like that. I like hard workouts." And she goes, "No, I don't mean that at all." She goes, "I mean finding your brother's letter." And I woke up from that dream, and I was sobbing uncontrollably on this little bunkhouse. And I didn't want to wake anybody else up, so I got up and I went outside and I laid in this hammock, and I was just asking God, I'm like, "God, like, what is this all about?" Right? Like, and God spoke to me and he said, "Unforgiveness." And I was like, "I don't have unforgiveness. I don't have unforgiveness towards anybody. Like, why would I have a dream like that, and why would it hurt so much?" And he said, "You have unforgiveness towards yourself." And I was like, whoa. Because it was true. I did have unforgiveness towards myself. I had unforgiveness towards myself because I was away at college while all this stuff was going on in my brother's life. And I was trying to do my own thing. And for a lot of years, like, I never talked about it. I never verbalized it. I always just kept lying to myself and pushing it down. But I had unforgiveness towards myself because I believed that if I had been there more, my brother wouldn't have done that, right? Like, if I could have just been there that night, if I could have just talked to him, right? And I carried that for all these years, and like, until I was finally able to stop lying to myself and really deal with that, I could fully let that go. And it was, I mean, in your life, there's just these things that you carry around from all these different experiences. And like, every time you let go of one of them, like, you really let go of them, one of them, you deal with it, and then you drop it off and you refuse to pick it back up. It's like, it's so freeing. It's just like this 45-pound weight that you've been carrying around just gets cut and dropped off. So, yeah. I guess, that's it for tonight as far as that goes, and just sharing with you about, my brother on the Sunday sermon. And I appreciate you guys taking the time to do this. Wow, 43 minutes. That's a long video. So if you're watching this, thank you for being here with me and sharing this this moment with me, and explaining this to you guys. So I love you guys. If this was useful to you, or if you know somebody that could hear this, please share this with them. Please like this video. And I just want to remind you guys, right? Like, the lesson from tonight and me sharing this story is, if you have somebody in your life, I don't care if you're angry at them. I don't care if you've had a falling out, right? Like, inside in your heart if you love them or not. Man, pick up the phone, go see them, tell them that you love them, because life is way too short. Way too short. And you never know when somebody is gone. And you're never going to get another chance to say those things or to do those things. So I say this in love. Don't be a fool. Don't be. Do something about it while you still have a chance. Just want to encourage you, brothers. Thanks for being with me tonight. Dave, I love you too. Thank you, man. And we'll see you guys tomorrow for My Life Monday. Hope you have a good night. Bye.